All right, friends, it's T, and I'm back with another video on a good friend, the gym lifting slave, JasonBlaha, strength and baloney fitness and baloney strength. Whoa, look at the dad bod. He's got good lighting there. He's trying to show himself off. Stop turning lengthened position partials into the new fad. It's not a new fad. It's not anything. It's been around forever. I don't know what era this guy grew up in, but I'm old school, okay? I'm actually 10 years older than him. So when I was working out back in the day, he lost a whole decade. The older people back in 70s and 80s were doing partial reps because even martial arts knows this. They're trying to create a degree of muscle damage, muscle injuries. They're trying to injure fibers, which is very difficult to do. Extremely difficult, because it's based on an adaptation process, which I will talk about and prove in this video, just that part.
Hey everybody, it's JasonBlaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about how people are going a little too far with this data and research on partials in a lengthened position. Now I've been...
All right, man. Jeez. If you're a chronic lifter, I told you before, then if you're a chronic lifter, you're getting something called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, okay? If you're a periodic lifter, then you usually get muscles that are damaged. And I'll go into this one first, probably. You've never heard of this, I don't know. Okay, so there's another report. Here's another one. The repeated bout effect. Does evidence for a crossover effect exist? A crossover effect. We know that the repeated bout effect it's associated with the protective effect against muscle damage from a single bout of eccentric exercise. It is an adaptation. It refers to an adaptation whereby a single bout of eccentric exercise protects against muscle damage from subsequent eccentric bouts. What does it move into? It moves into type 1. It recruits a recruitment of slow twitch motor units. And what are slow twitch motor units? Type 1 muscle fibers. And so that means you're an endurance athlete now, because you're chronically coming in and lifting. You understand me? You're not doing it periodically. So yeah, and here's another thing. When you are a chronic lifter, if you are a chronic lifter and you're trying to build myofibrillar growth, okay, this type of growth, hold on. Just in case there's like new people here, I don't know. All right, so we know there's two types of hypertrophy. Sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which refers to the increased muscle glycogen storage, giving you these fake muscles. Then you have the myofibrillar hypertrophy, which focuses more on the increase of myofibrillar size. So there you go, man. It looks like this. Sarcoplasmic, there's myofibrillar. You got it, man? Sarcoplasmic, myofibrillar. Means there was no growth in muscle fibers, okay? So we have a protective effect against muscle damage. And so the crossover effect exists. Individuals undergoing, and we all know, and you know this in science, they tell you, undergoing an unaccustomed exercise bout incorporating a high degree of eccentric muscle contractions. Listen to what they're telling you. A high degree of eccentric muscle contractions. Those contractions have to be very fast, rapid, because you're trying to break the fast twitch muscle fibers. If you're moving too slow in your exercises, you can't break the type 2 muscle fibers. It's an overworking of an unaccustomed exercise. Let's just put it this way. It's an overworking of a muscle that is unaccustomed to doing that. It is unaccustomed to overworking this type 2 muscle fiber back and forth, rapidly. It has to be rapid. It has to be semi-heavy, and it has to be rapid, very fast. Okay, so a high degree of eccentric muscle contractions. That's what they're telling you here. Commonly experienced is a delayed onset muscle soreness because this is a type of damage. The damage manifests itself via tenderness, loss of strength, swelling, elevated muscle enzyme activity, and loss of flexibility. Following an initial bout, so I got cut off there. A loss of strength, swelling, enzyme activity, loss of flexibility. Following an initial bout, a repeated bout results in reduced symptoms. This protective effect is known as the repeated bout effect. The reduced symptoms meaning no more damage to muscle fibers. You understand me? It's a protective effect, okay? Known as the repeated bout effect. It can last up to 24 weeks between bouts. So you may never ever get another damage to your muscles within, I guess, 24 weeks between bouts. Even if you are a chronic lifter, that's why I was trying to tell people, even if you are a chronic lifters occasionally, they may do something that they're unaccustomed to doing in the gym. And so they may get this damage to come back. Now, usually they'll tell you, as you can see, it lasts up to 24 weeks between bouts. That's why people are telling you you're lucky if you get 5 pounds of muscle in like 10 years. That is crazy. The mechanism for the RBE is unclear. No, it's not unclear. It's a protective effect. Both central and local mechanisms have been suggested in an attempt to test the central hypothesis. And then they take these people, blah, 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 they test them, whatever. So, I'm not going to get into the whole thing here. So yeah, it's a protective effect, man. Okay, so there you go. I don't know what else to say there, man. This delayed onset muscle soreness, and they even tell you here, and to delay this part 1, delayed onset muscle soreness. It's an ultra-structural muscle injury, okay? The manifestation of DOMS caused by eccentric, unfamiliar forms of exercise. Clinical signs, they never say that this happens in chronic lifting. It always says unfamiliar, unaccustomed, stuff like that, okay? So there you go. The clinical signs are reduced force capacities, increased painful restriction of movement, stiffness, swelling, and a dysfunction of adjacent joints. Although DOMS is considered a mild type of injury, it is one of the most common reasons for compromised supportive performance. You don't want to have that as a sports person, okay? So yeah, and then it goes into more detail here. Considering that the ultrastructural damage of muscle cells, so you're damaging muscle cells due to unfamiliar sporting activities or eccentric exercise, which leads to further protein degradation, apoptosis, and a local inflammatory response. That's why you got to eat a lot. Protein synthesis needs to exceed this breakdown. If you do get this type of muscle, if you do get muscle damage, otherwise you'll get an apoptosis. Okay, man? So stop being ignorant.
And research on partials in a lengthened position. Now, I've been saying
the partial lengthened position allows you to move through real time. Those type 2 muscle fibers, you're able to hit them, you're able to cause them to damage a lot faster than doing a full range of motion. You don't need a full range. What you need is a rapid, eccentric, concentric movement. Like it said there, it has to be, man, it has to be like it says here, okay? It has to be exactly what they say here. High degree of eccentric muscle contractions. The contractions have to be in a high degree to cause that muscle to damage. It is very difficult to cause muscles to damage these muscle cells. It has to be extremely high degree of eccentric movements, okay?
Saying for a long time that one of the keys to muscle growth is, of course, to get into those lengthened positions.
One of the keys to muscle growth is to cause damage to the muscle fibers so that the progenitor cell comes out and splits, divides, and increases in number. You get more cells and you bypass MND size limit, okay? And those cells get bigger. That's how you bypass it, okay? You need more muscle cells. They reach an MND size limit, each cell. They can only get so big. They can't get bigger, okay?
The bottom of most movements, right, where the muscles are the most stretched. There's a lot to be said for that, okay? There's a lot to be said
Your coach is shit and stupid. He doesn't even prove anything that he says. What kind of coach is this, man?
for that. But I think part of the problem that people are not thinking about is what they are missing when they're doing just the bottom half of movements. And I think what a lot of the research is...
The bottom half, the lengthening position is the most important. That's the whole point. The pulling up position, we're not trying to seek to get the strongest lift like a power lift, okay, and then dropping the weight. We're not dropping it. We're really moving the weight up so that we can move it down faster so that we can cause the muscle fiber to bust. It will not bust just doing exercise. Impossible. Impossible.
Problematic on is number one. Research on exercise science is not particularly good. It is not one of the better sciences, and I've done videos explaining why it's problematic, why it's difficult to gather data, why the number of people involved is way too small to always draw the best conclusions. There's problems with the peer review process on it, like they're given a lot of leeway. Okay. And then there's also enormous amounts of bias, and that bias is, again, can be a funding problem. But let's get over and talk about the problems. One of the things...
This guy is an endurance athlete, okay? He's an endurance, whatever, an endurance lifter. Forget about athlete. He's not even an athlete. Shit. He's an endurance lifter, okay? That's all. He's chronically lifting, all right? That's all he's doing. It's a thermogenic effect now because he's bodybuilding. He's kind of like bodybuilding because he wants to, I don't know, what the fuck, man. May as well just go on a carnivore diet and you can create this body. You don't have to do any of this work. This is just stupidity, but whatever. And do a bunch of jumping jacks. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so he's using weights. He thinks that weights will somehow, they have magic powers to transform his body. Weights do not have magic powers to transform your bodies. They can only do two things. The movements can only do two things. You can eat glycogen and move a bunch of weights, okay? And you could pump more of this glycogen in the muscle. You could use weights, you could use bands, you could use anything to pump glycogen in the muscle. As long as glycogen synthesis exceeds this breakdown, okay? You get these phony muscles. Now, if you want to bust muscles, you use weights too. You use weights, you create relative amount of damage, and they repair, remodel into bigger, better, stronger, faster muscles, okay? So it doesn't work in chronic lifting, that's periodic lifting. So yeah, it's not going to do anything, man. This guy's just stupid. It's not going to make him pretty either. It's not going to make you look beautiful. It's not going to do anything. And lifting heavier, it's an adaptation process of these myocytic androgen receptors. It's kind of obvious, man. It's all in science. Jesus.
Things to think about is even if you get a set of studies and they're like, oh yeah, well this particular muscle, right, this particular muscle or this head of a muscle grew just as much, if not more, from doing just the bottom half versus the full range of motion. Here's the...
Let me ask you this question. So if you put if glycogen pumps into the muscle and it grew, did you grow a muscle? Yeah, the muscle grew. But is it real muscle though? Did you grow real muscles though inside there? No, absolutely not.
Issue. There is really no such thing as an isolation exercise, right?
Whoa, man. If you're standing, here's the thing. He says there's no such thing as isolation movements. Well, if you're, yeah, because it's the weight, you could say it's isometric. You're picking up weights, so that would be considered isometric because there's a gravitational loading because you're holding a heavier weight now. Whether you're doing curls or especially standing up, doing all these so-called exercises standing up, that's more of an isometric. Yeah, even if you are sitting down, you're still sitting. You're still lifting weight. The gravity is pulling you down. If gravity is pulling you down, you're lifting a weight. It's the opposite. And so you're getting a gravitational loading. That would be considered an isometric movement. Now, let's say he's doing these, I don't know, he's doing these dumbbell curls for his arm. That's still an isometric movement, you standing up doing these curls because there is a gravitational loading. But it's very short. That's the problem, because you're doing 10 reps and putting it down and resting.
Everybody understands that, right? If you don't understand that, we've got a problem. In other words, you can't isolate a muscle.
Yeah, you're isolating a muscle, man. If you're doing if you're doing dumbbell curls, you are isolating the muscle. For the eccentric concentric movement, you are isolating it. I'm not saying you're isolating the entire body from an isometric, from isometric. They call that planks. It means that you're standing still, doing specific things where it's weight bearing, and you're just standing still in real time, like these kung fu artists. Duh. So yeah, man, but it's still eccentric concentric movement is an isolation of that muscle group, because you aren't doing your back or your shoulders. So what the hell is he talking about?
A barbell curl or even a concentration curl with a dumbbell does not isolate the bicep. All right, let's get
Yeah, it isolates the bicep. He's bullshitting.
that out of the way. When you start looking at some of these even smaller upper body movements, what you have to understand is that certain parts of the range of motion have an enormous bias towards certain heads or towards other muscles. So if you're only measuring one muscle, all right, see where we're going? You're only measuring one muscle, not all the muscles involved. It's definitely...
When you're doing something like muscle damage, and you have a problem with something called the repeated bout effect, you definitely want to do your full upper body on the day. You don't want to split up and isolate things. It won't work, because it'll protect itself. That means it'll protect the rest of the body from ever getting this damage. Let's say you came in one day and you did your arms. They got damaged. Now you want to come back and you want to do some bro splits. It ain't going to work anymore. That's why you got to do full upper body, because of the repeated bout effect. It's rapidly protecting muscle from getting damaged. That's why as you move through the movements, let's say you do a bench press. You do a lot of bench press. Man, your back has gotten worked. Your shoulders and your arms and everything, they got worked. They got worked. And so it's an overworking of an unaccustomed exercise, because you're kind of unaccustomed to doing this. So yeah. I don't know, man. And so you're going to get a lot of this reduced force capacity as you're going through your movements. That's why I usually try to start with the biggest muscle groups as much as possible. I'll go and do chest, back, and then I'll move. Sometimes I do forearms with chest, which is a bad thing, because if I go super heavy on my forearms, my grip, my grip starts to go. So that could be a bad thing. Gotta watch out with that. Your grip may go. So usually the small muscle groups I do at the end, the big ones I do first. So I always start with chest, back, and then I may move to shoulders, and I'll do arms, then forearms, or sometimes it's all relative, man. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, I'll do forearms at the end so I don't lose my grip. And then I may do some neck and then ab work, and then that's it. And then I'll get the hell out of there. Okay?
Only going to skew the data. Example, curls. All right, look at the anatomy of a curl. Yeah, we could talk about the shoulder involvement for like the short head and everything. Okay, we could talk about all that, but let's just talk about the bicep and the accompanying muscles. All right. Bicep has obviously a little more of the bias load at the bottom half of the movement. Okay? When we're talking just the elbow joint. But what gets recruited very heavily on the top half? The brachialis. Okay, see where we're going with this? So if you skip the bottom of a curl, when you see all these guys doing it, you see tons of guys doing it, even these preacher curls and all this other stuff. You are limiting bicep development. But if you skip the top, you're limiting brachialis.
Again, you could say in muscle damage, a stretching of that muscle is very important. The lengthening partial of that muscle is important to cause it to damage. So I'm not against anybody doing these partial reps, man, providing they're periodic lifters and not chronic. It ain't going to work for chronic lifting, but it definitely will work with chronic lifting for more sarcoplasmic loading of glycogen into the muscle, because you're getting the pump. So yeah, does lengthening partials work for getting the pump? Yeah, getting these phony pump muscles, pumped up muscles? Yeah, sure. Does it work for muscle damage? Of course. Yeah, man. It's a rapid movement for type 2.
So you guys always notice, you see historically, you'll see a lot of these bodybuilders, you got these concentration curls where I really squeeze and focus the top, builds my bicep peak. It's because it's building the brachialis. Right?
How does that weight build a peak on the muscle? How does it build a peak? Oh, sarcoplasmic. He's telling you weight is building a muscle. I don't know any weights that build muscles. Don't weights damage muscles? Doesn't it say? Didn't it say there in science it damages muscle cells? Like it's last time I looked there, it says damages muscle cells. It says here the damage manifests. Okay, gets all this. Hold on a second. Repeat about symptoms of the pro. I don't know where that was now. Didn't it say here muscle cells? Initial bout of repeated bout effect, reduced symptoms known as RBV. Suggested that the attempt is. Well, I don't know where that was now. I think I lost it somewhere. It says that it damages muscle cells, right? I don't know where that was. I can't remember now. Shit. Hold on. Maybe it's in here. Hold on a second. There it is. So currently to be the ultrastructural damage of muscle cells due to unfamiliar supportive activities. So what causes muscle cells to damage? Damage to muscle cells. Oh, it's due to what? Unfamiliar supportive activities or eccentric exercise is what causes muscle cells to damage. Now listen to what they're saying. It's not necessarily weightlifting that causes damage to muscle fiber. That's why I try to explain to people. People don't understand that you don't need a gym to cause damage to muscle cells. It says here, ultrastructural damage to muscle cells due to unfamiliar sporting activities. Unfamiliar sporting activities. And or eccentric exercise. Now, what do they mean by unfamiliar sporting activities? I try to explain this in a lot of my videos, bro. I told you, if you've gone swimming the very first time, you've never swam before, you're going to get this damage to the muscle cells. Now, if you go ice skating and you haven't been there for the entire year, you're going to get damage in those shins. Now, if you're a rock climber, you're going to get damaged. If you're a runner, you're going to get damaged in your legs. Even in the martial arts or whatever sport that you're doing, I don't know what it is, but you're going to get damage in the muscle cells providing that you were unfamiliar doing it. Now, people that are periodically lifting, doing eccentric exercise, you too, unfamiliar eccentric exercise gets this damage. It's a known fact, man. Okay? That's why, and then the repeated bout effect kicks in and it stops working.
It's because it's building the brachialis. Right? What does the brachialis do when you flex your bicep? It rolls up under the bicep. Now,
I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay, overhead pressing, perfect example. People don't seem to realize, they're always like, oh, the overhead press doesn't work the side heads. It works the side head enormously on the bottom half.
And everything works.
If you just do the...
Everything works is provided that you're unfamiliar doing it, you'll get this damage. But if you're familiar like him, he's familiar with all these things, your body's now familiar with this stuff. You know what they say, they used to say this about it. They say when you become familiar with something, it stops working. You become bored of it. Why are people bored of, why do you keep getting new fashion, new cars, new fads, why does the fitness industry bring out new fads? Why do they keep, why does McDonald's bring out new menus and all this kind of stuff? Why don't they just do the exact same thing over and over and over again? Want to know why? Because here's what happens. You become familiar with it. You become familiar. And so when you become unfamiliar with something, that's when things start to happen. You get damage to muscle cells. But they don't damage when they're familiar. See what I mean? When you're familiar with things, you become bored and it dies. That thing that it had, it goes away. Like your love life. Once when you were unfamiliar, it was all good in the beginning. But once it became familiar, it became familiar with my wife. She got boring. You look at her and stuff. The sex isn't the same anymore. You're not really in love with her anymore. You know, it's not so strong like in the beginning. Why is everything so strong in the beginning when you're unfamiliar with it? Why is the damage greater when in the beginning, when you first started in the gym, when you were unfamiliar doing it? Why was it so great? But later, the DOMS effect just went down, it subsided, and it just dissipated. Why did the DOMS go away? Want to know why? Because it's an adaptation process. That's why the DOMS went away, because it's an adaptation process. See that? It's an adaptation process. It slowly goes down and goes away and disappears, this DOMS. It goes away because of the repeated bout effect phenomena. Yeah.
If you just do the bottom half, obviously it's the lateral with a plate or a dumbbell or a cable is a phenomenal side delt builder, right?
Yeah, side delt builder. If you're getting glycogen loading, it'll build the side delt, yeah.
Well, so is on any of these exercises, because you could apply that to not just an overhead press, but a lateral. Different muscles and different heads get worked at different points of the range of motion. So
he's just making all this stuff up. He really is a shitty ass coach, man. Really shitty.
A lot of these exercises,
he looks like shit. He has no chest. He has nothing. It's all pretend, man.
Makes sense to do the position isn't positions. They're important, right? We should be going.
Is he isolating here? Well, he's kind of throwing the weight up and down. Had he done it with a lighter weight and he could manage, he could actually cause damage to the muscle fiber. And then when they damage, they repair bigger, better, stronger, and faster. When he comes back, he probably would not be throwing that weight up and down in the air anymore, because his arms would be stronger. They could manage that weight now without throwing it. And then they get bigger, better, stronger, and faster. And then he just keeps moving up in weight and managing it. But his problem is he just likes being weak, because he's a weak guy. He's weak. I'm telling you, your coach is weak, okay? I don't care.
All the way down. We're always going to have full range of motion on everything, but it's a good idea to work muscles in general.
Yes, it's a good idea to do all these things and waste your time. Yes. Watch JasonBlaha. Waste your life away. I gotta go, man. Tell me what you think about that. Like, subscribe, support the channel. Comment down below. Helps with the algorithm, broski. Stop turning lengthening position partials into a new fad. It's not a new fad, it's an old fad. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.